Sir, you are not audible.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
So let's start the introduction of the speaker. Good evening, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our expert speaker, Dr. Shweta Sharma, Assistant Professor in the Department of Computer Engineering at National Institute of Technology, NIT, Kolkata. With an academic journey deeply rooted in excellence, Dr. Sharma brings a wealth of experience in cybersecurity and intelligence systems. He holds a BTech in Information Technology from Himachal Pradesh University and MTech with specialization in cybersecurity from the Central University of Punjab and a PhD from NITTT at Chandigarh, focusing on malware analysis and detection. Dr. Sharma has previously served at esteemed institutes like Tech Chandigarh, IIT Unna, and has delivered expert sessions at IIT Kanpur, CDEC Mohali, UIT Solan. She, she is a recipient of Outstanding Research Paper Award in 2022 and the Best Student Award during the post graduation. Her current research interests span cybersecurity, phishing detection, IoT, machine learning, and deep learning applications, and bioinformatics. With multiple SCI and Dex publications to her credit, Dr. Sharma is also an active reviewer of consulting journals. We are delighted to have her with us today and look forward to a hands-on and insightful session in the cutting-edge domains. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir, for the introduction and very good afternoon to everyone. So I'm now sharing my screen. So can anyone please confirm whether my screen is visible?
Yes, ma'am, visible.
Okay, and the PPT is moving?
Yes, ma'am, moving.
Thank you. So, dear participants, so today's session is about fraud detection and cyber risk management, where I'll be telling some case studies as well as some hands-on using ML model in order to detect these kind of malicious activities. So, in this session, basically, I'll be discussing or I'll be dividing it into two parts. So, part one will be the analysis of malware, and part two will be the detection of malware, where I'll be briefing about some case studies as well as hands-on machine learning models. So in order to perform this experiment, you only need Windows operating system. And let's start with the malware. So malware stands for malicious software. So malware can be available, or it can be in any laptop, it can be present in any computer system, it can present in any mobile phone, in any form such as Trojan, spyware, ransomware, basically bots, in any form it can be present. And this session, basically I'll be focusing on Android malware, but the procedure is same. If you want to perform the same experiment, you can do it on Windows malware also, or any malware which is available on any Internet of Things devices. Basically, we know about IoT devices, that there are billions of IoT devices surrounding us. So, as soon as we are moving towards IP version 6 and we are surrounded by IoT devices, the cyber criminals, they are targeting these IoT devices with these malicious software, which are commonly known as malware. So it is very important to detect these kind of malware And we are going to detect with AI, because a signature based technique it is not possible to detect all different types of malware, especially zero day attacks or the ransomware attacks. So definitely we are going to use this AI models. So about Android operating system, so we know that in Android, just like in Windows operating system, we install or download software in the form of exe. So in Android, we download apps which have extension this APK, that are Android package kits. That is, all apps have the same extension. And just like we download a zip folder, similarly we download this .apk, which after installation in our device we can use it, whether it's any social media app, Instagram, Facebook, or any Zoom, any app which we regularly use in our day-to-day task. And when we, if you just type Android malware on Google and go to this news section, you will see that there are millions of Android malware that are available in the market in third party app store, and they are continuously targeting these Android phones. Why they are basically targeting Android operating system? Only because Android has larger surface area as compared to other mobile operating system. So, because it has a large surface area, this is the number one point that cyber criminals are targeting. Moreover, we can say that yes, iOS has provided more security. In Android, we can download any app from any app store. For example, if in Indian government has banned some Chinese apps such as TikTok, so the Indian basically the users, they can easily download this app from third party app store. So it is very easy to download the apps from any kind of app store. Even if I'm saying Play Store is also not fully secure. Even bouncers are available there to basically remove the apps which are malicious, but still the Play Store is also not very secure, so we should be very careful about it. And you can see here on the screen that a lot of malware, they are not only infecting your mobile operating system, but they are also fetching your details, your credit card details, your social media details, your photographs, and everything. So it is very important to analyze these kind of cyber fraud, and it is very important to detect the same. And why I'm calling this fraud, because these malware can come to you in any form. It can come to you in the form of image in a WhatsApp. If you remember, a few days back, government has issued a guideline that do not download any image from any unknown number. And during India Pakistan war also, we can see that there was some everyone has put the status to do not download any image, do not download this exe file, and so on, Hillary dance, and so on. So we can see there it is very easy to infect Android operating system with this kind of malicious activity, because we have so many social media groups, as well as email also. Through email, if I can send you an attachment in the form of image, and once you downloaded it, then your phone or your laptop or any operating system that you're using right now, it may be infected. So that is why it becomes very important, and it is we can say it is a very good research area for all of you. If you want to start your research, or if you want to guide someone in your for example, your research scholars. So definitely, in order to do the research, we need the data set, because we know that AI needs data. Without data, it cannot work. Just like we need food to eat, similarly, your AI needs data. And you already had, I think, basic sessions about CNN and other LLM models also. Now you know that you require data set. Okay, so data set you can get. First, you need to read some research paper in Google Scholar. You can ask them for the data. You can request them for the data, but I recommend all of you to get the raw data. Raw data means you do not get the CSV file. You will easily get the CSV file on IEEE data port, Kaggle, etc. But if you actually want to work on exe file, or on APK files, or any kind of malicious file which are in the form of raw, you need to prepare yourself this CSV file. If you are getting the CSV file and applying the AI model and thinking that, okay, our research paper will be published in any SCI index journal, then it will be very difficult. So that is the first thing, that you need to read some research article and you need to request the data set from them. And other basically the sources for dataset are, besides this Google Scholar, is VirusShare. If you go to this website, you can download the dataset, and yes, you can get it from Kaggle also. But as I earlier said, that in Kaggle you will be able to find the CSV data, and CSV data means, as it is, you are providing it to ML model. You're not preparing it yourself. Then yes, your publication. I mean, getting acceptance of your publication would be a little bit difficult. So it would be good if you can download the dataset from VirusShare. I'll tell you how you can download it. VirusShare. You can go to this website. You need to create your account first. For that, you need to write an email that you are going to use it for research purpose only. All the samples that you are downloading, you are not going to harm anyone. It will just take a few seconds, and then they will also reply you back with your user ID and your password, and then you will be able to log in and download the malware samples. Okay, so in the meantime, the website is opening. So let me proceed with the next part. So after downloading these samples, we need to do reverse engineering. So engineering is like making things. You're making an IoT system. You're making this air conditioner. Uh, you're making any calculator. You're making a smart dustbin. So reverse engineering means going to the backward direction. We are opening those devices to check what wires are being used, what microcontroller is being used, what microprocessor is being used there. So that is basically the reverse engineering. So similarly in software thing, if I talk about this reverse engineering, it is known as disassembling a software program. Now, for example, you got a zip file. What do you do to open it? You unzip it first. Then you can see the documents and you can read those. Okay, so similarly here in malware thing, you download, for example, any file such as any package file .exe. Now you cannot directly read the source code, for example, your Java source code, C++, in which that particular software has been written. No, you cannot do it, because if anyone can do it, then anyone can copy anyone's software. Right, if I made a software and I provided you .exe, the package file, you can easily copy and paste and make another software, similar kind of software. So that is why you cannot read the source code. For that you need specific tool in order to perform this reverse engineering. Okay, so basically we apply this reverse engineering on APKs or exe or any kind of software executable file, to reveal the file it contains, to reveal the source code, to retrieve the images, videos it contains. So then yes, you require this reverse engineering. And basically, if you have heard about malware analysis, so that team performed this reverse engineering to recover the files for malware analysis. If you remember, so there was a ransomware attack that happened in year 2017, and in various countries, I think approximately 30 countries, and in India it also had a huge impact. So there was a malware analyst. He actually performed this malware analysis, but he performed dynamic analysis in order to check the IP address, network activity, and this is how they trace back it and they close those servers. So that is why it is very important to analyze the file. So it will reveal you a lot of information, permissions, operational codes, images, videos, basically APIs, and lot of information you will see. Now we are going to do practical. So I think VirusShare has been blocked by our firewall. That is why it is not opening. But if it is working on your end, I recommend all of you to go to the VirusShare website and make your account. You can go to the login. And if you want to download any malware, you need to type on the search box. You can type malware. You will see lot of option. And there is a download button. You will see you can download one by one each malware. And if you want to download Android malware, then in the search box, you need to write Android, and then you will see only the Android malware. Then that also you can download one by one. Okay. So let us proceed to the next part. And yes, you can download because obviously we need two types of files. We need genuine files also, we need malicious also, because I need to train my machine learning model on malicious as well as genuine. Then only it can differentiate both files. Okay, so that you can download from APK Pure also, APK Mirror also, and other one VirusShare too I have already discussed with all of you. So you can visit any of these websites and download the malware. Now, in order to perform reverse engineering, as I already told you, we need a tool. If you directly unzip it, for example, you got a zip file. If you directly unzip it, you will see that, okay, you can unzip and you can see the files, but no, actually the answer is no, you cannot see all files. In order to properly see all these files, you need a proper specific tool. For example, this APK tool is one of the tool, and there are a lot of other tools available in literature. You can go through that and you can download other tool also. So let us proceed with this APK tool. For that APK, first you need to download it. So this is the link that I have given. You can click on that link. I have already shared my PPTs, all materials with Abhishek sir. So will share with all of you. You can go to this link and you will be able to download it. And please remember one thing: whenever you are downloading it, you also need to download the batch file. Uh, for example, I downloaded this APK tool. I have already also made this batch file. How you can make it? There is a batch code available. You can copy it and paste it in your notepad. You are done. No changes you need to make. Very simple. So now you need to open your command prompt and you need to go to the same directory in which you have downloaded your APK tool or in which your APK tool has been placed. You need to go to the same path or same location. Now you need to write few lines such as Java. Why Java? Because yes, very important. You need to install JDK in your system in order to perform this practical. If Java is not installed in your system, you won't be able to do the practical. Okay. Now first thing you have to write is Java space -jar, then the name of the tool, that is apktool.jar. Okay. If you can see this manual, it means yes, APK tool is working and everything is fine. Okay. Now you have to write Java jar apktool.jar, same line. Now D stands for decompile, because I want to decompile my any APK. For example, pubg.apk. So I downloaded this app and I performed this decompile operation. And in order to get more files, resources, you need to use this B option. B stands for build. So whenever you will write this and the name of the APK, you are done and you will be able to see all files, Mali file, classes, folder, everything. Let me show you the practical. Even you can see the Dalvik executable file also. So here you can see that APK tool is available on this location. So that is why I'm writing Java space -jar space. Now I'm going to write the name of the tool, that is APK tool dot jar space D, because I want to decompile. So you can see on my screen I have two APKs and I have put a short name to that APK so that it would be easy for me to write in the command prompt. So 1.apk, that's it. Now you can see that 1.apk is already there. Now you will be able to see a folder with the name 1 whenever it is done with the decompiling part. Now you can see. So it is like unzipping. Now you are unzipping a file. But here you will be able to see all the resources, images, folders, executable files, everything. Now in the meantime it is doing its work, let me tell you more about it. This is known as basically static analysis. Static analysis means that we are analyzing the source code. Okay. But we don't have any dynamic information about the malware. Dynamic means whenever it is executing on runtime, what information am I getting? For example, the IP address that it is using, the server, everything. That information I cannot get with static analysis. But yes, it is safer one to use and less cost effective, and it give you more features. So this is all. Now let us start with build option. So build one. Okay, so it is doing its work, and you can see that this folder is already created, and you can see res, the folder resources. It has some images, and you can do this work on any kind of malware. For example, if you are working on any specific malware, then the chances of publication would be increased. For example, in my PhD, instead of working on generic malware, I focused on ransomware only, which is a kind of malware which locks the screen as well as encrypt your data and send it to some remote location. Actually, at that time, a big ransomware attack happened. So I thought that yes, this would be a good area. And even nowadays, ransomware is very famous, that uh, hackers actually use it everywhere. Ransomware, spyware, adware, you will see that they are making havoc in the basically in this industry. Okay, I think we are done with this build part. Now let us check what kind of files am I getting. So this is Android manifest .xml. It contains all the permissions that an app is asking. So it is, let me tell you about it. It is compulsory for an app developer to write all the permissions in this file. Whatever permission an app is going to ask from the user, it is mandatory for the developer to write all these permissions. You can see here: internet access, network state, read phone state, receive boot completed. These are all the permissions that this particular app is asking. These are, I think, only few permissions, but in some malware you will see that they are actually asking a lot of information. And this read phone state, it is basically very dangerous permission that an app is asking. So that is why we should be very careful. Although in new operating system, Android operating system, we got this now that we can turn off the permissions, or we can use the permission whenever we are using a particular app. So that is basically we got. But still, if one time we give access to these kind of permission, and if it is very dangerous malware, then our phone is gone. So let us come back to the slide. Now, I guess I have already shown you practically, and you can see on the screenshot also PUBG.apk say I have done this reverse engineering and it make this folder PUBG. So when I open it, it will give me these kind of files: assets, library, original, resources, Smalley code. You can analyze this Smalley code also. Okay, and yes, it can be converted to your Java source code also, but then you need another tool. So that depends on your research, how much depth do you want to go. Now, when I open this manifest.xml file, you can see that PUBG is asking for these many permissions. And you can actually see that whether it requires these kind of permissions or not. For example, if I'm talking about Uber or Ola app, they are asking for location permission. So that is fine. That makes sense that, okay, a cab is going to come to your precise location. But if any other app that you are music app wants to know your language, so that is why it might be asking for your location. But suppose we are using any other app, dictionary app, and that is asking for your location, that doesn't make any sense. So we should be very careful about whenever you are giving access of some permissions to your app. So you can see record audio. I have never played PUBG, but I don't know whether it needs to record my audio. That is why it is asking. I have no idea about it, but I guess these are very dangerous permission, and we should not give these permission right external storage to any app. Why am I giving my storage to a particular app? I think that also does not make sense. Okay, for some apps require this, mm, basically permission to store the data, but not all apps. So this is basically malware analysis that we have done.
Shweta ma'am?
Okay, dear participants, I'm sorry I was disconnected due to internet issues. So let me share the screen again. So I hope my screen is visible and I'm audible to everyone. Can anyone please confirm?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
It's
thank you.
visible and audible.
So due to the low range of internet, I have basically turned off my camera. So now you can see on the screen the dangerous permissions that you should be very careful about while giving the access to any app. For example, access background location. Now, whenever you are giving this access, you are giving your location permission, and it has basically coarse and fine location under it. So coarse location is approximate location and fine location is exact precise location. So similarly, answer phone calls, call phone, camera. I think the name says everything, and we know about it. Process outgoing calls. These all are dangerous permission, including your calendar reading, call logs, read contacts, read your external storage, and read phone state, and read SMS, send SMS, record audio, and external, write external storage. And whenever I have accessed these malicious apps and compared the permissions with the genuine apps, I've observed that basically these kind of dangerous permissions are often asked by these kind of malicious apps. So we should be very careful about it. So this was the first part. And before moving to the second part, I would like to show you about something. So you can see here, I've already shown you this Android manifest.xml file. Let me open it again. Okay, so this I have already shown you. It contains all the permissions. So in the second part, we are going to do malware detection. And for that malware detection, definitely we need a CSV file. And this we cannot give directly to the machine learning model due to the obvious reason. We know that it requires a format. It requires either the images or it in the format of CSV, proper cleaning. So that is why basically this Python program has been written, in which what did I do? I prepare a list of all permissions. So these permission I got from Android official website, and there are basically 330 permissions that are being used, uh, and it can be used in any app. But the only thing is that the Android developer has to write the same, okay, in the manifest.xml file. So I made a list and I wrote the code that whenever an app is asking for a permission, write 1. If an app is not asking for that particular permission, write 0. So very easy code, in categorical form. I'm using that CSV file and giving the same to the machine learning model. So you can see that I have written, and after writing this list, I have basically compare it, and if out of this header list, if any permission is being used in a file, write the value 1, else write value 0. So this is basically where I put my uh, files. So because I was working on ransomware, so I stored in that location particularly. So this is all about the code Python script that I have written. Now android manifest.xml file, this I've told you because I cannot do it manually. And whenever you're working on it, you can work on millions of malware also, you can work on thousands of malware also, you cannot do it manually. Definitely require a script which can make your work easy. Now I will show you the data that I have prepared. So after writing the code, this is the data that I have prepared. You can see on the header, all permissions have been mentioned. Okay, dangerous permission, normal permissions also. 330 permissions I got from official website of Android. And this is row number 1. So it means that app number 1. Next row means app number 2. Next row means app number 3. So it is very important. Please observe this very carefully because we are going to use this in machine learning model. And so on, you can see. Now, you can see here one means that this app number 6 is using this permission location. Okay, and if it might be possible that an app is using more than 2 or 5 permissions, so only thing you have to do is write one on that particular cell. For example, I'm writing here 1. So app number 10 is using this location permission as well as this another permission. It is also using course as well as find location, and so on. So this is how, with the help of this Python script, I have written all the permissions in the form of 0, 1 format, because definitely my ML model is going to understand it. And the last column is type. Again, I'm repeating, this is type or target, class. You can give it any name. It is not permission. It is just telling the machine learning model that, hey, these rows are 1. 1 means that these are malware. Okay, so this is for your understanding. And wherever I have written 0, 0 means that these are benign apps, that is, which are non-malicious. It will not harm. So this is how we are going to train the machine learning model with approximately equal number of classes, that is approximately equal number of malicious and benign files. So you can see here approximately I have 400 samples with me, and 200 are approximately malware, and 200 rest of the 200 are benign. I hope this part is clear to everyone. So this, I was saying that do not get this data or download this data, make this data yourself, because the data that you are downloading will have the features that are already used in any research paper. For example, permissions are already used by thousands of research paper which is published in lot of conferences. You require some features that have not been today. Okay, for example, when I was working on ransomware part, I saw some features which was not used by anyone. For example, a text written on the image. No one has used OCR to extract that text, because whenever ransomware attack your system, it will lock your screen and write a message to pay this amount in Bitcoin. Otherwise, you will be an FIR will be launched, and so on. It will write these kind of threatening messages. So this is how you need to. I mean, you need to find these kind of novel features in these source code. You need to check what features, novel features you can extract so that you can give a good result or better result. Okay, so this is all about the first part, that is analysis. So now I'm moving on the second part, that is detection. If anyone has any doubt in between, you can ask.
No, ma'am, it's clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now I'm moving to the malware detection part. So that is, we are going to detect the malware, and before detection we are going to see some case studies also. And yes, we are going to detect malware with ML model. Okay. So this is, I guess, okay. Okay, let's start. So this is the table of content, and these are the parts that I'll be covering. And I'm not wasting my time on introduction. I guess we all know that we are giving human intelligence to a machine. Now a machine can also make a decision. So that is basically artificial intelligence. And everyone knows about John McCarthy. He coined this term first time, that is AI. That is why he's also known as the father of AI. Now about machine learning, this is an area of artificial intelligence, and here there's no need to write program every time. We just give it a data, and it will make decision like it's a malware or not. How on the patterns that we have provided in the form of data set. So in form of that, it can also predict future behavior. For example, whether it will be rainy, cloudy, what will be the humidity, and so on. And of course, the types of machine learning, you all know about supervised, unsupervised, and semi-supervised. So just a quick explanation. A supervised learning is similar to a classroom learning where a teacher is supervising students, teaching students, and explaining everything. And if a student has any doubt, then a teacher is going to respond the same. So this is kind of supervised machine learning model. That is, we are providing label data to the model. Label data means that whether it's hexagon, it's triangle, it's square, we are already providing that to machine learning model. So model already knows about it. And in prediction, we don't give the label. We just give it in the form of test, and it will tell me, oh, this is square and this is triangle. Again, it is like a classroom learning. In class, we basically give answer to all the doubts, but when there are end sem or mid sem exams, we only give the question paper to the students and answers are not written on it, and students have to write the answers, and we are going to compare those answers with the actual answers. So accordingly they will get the marks out of 100. So that will be basically their marks or their percentage or their CGPA. So supervised learning is basically used in email, whether the mail is spam or not. And these are the few very basic supervised machine learning algorithms, and we know about it, so I'm not going to explain it. But yes, there is drawback of machine learning algorithm, that although you will get very good result, very good accuracy, but it only work if it already knows about it. So for example, you're giving it a 0-day attack, it does not know about it. You're giving it any unknown sample on which it is not trained, it won't be able to detect it, or it will detect but the result may be wrong. Okay, so that is basically the drawback. So that is why there is semi-supervised learning, that is partially supervised and partially unsupervised. So that means that we have a pseudo label data set, and we are going to train our model on that. So it works like this, that suppose I have a large amount of data set and I cannot label it, because human actually, who labels it? Human actually makes mistakes, a lot of mistakes. So in that case, yes, I can go with that semi-supervised machine learning model. My research scholar, she's also working on semi-supervised. He's working on firewall, next generation firewall, and we got a lot of data from our firewall, and we are working on it. And yes, without labeling it and everything, we are using this semi-supervised. Now we are giving this small amount of labeled data, that is labeled, to the ML model, and large amount of unlabeled data to the ML model. Now it will actually label it. Instead of human, the ML model will label it. Now we'll again check how much data is correct. The data which is correctly labeled will be added to this small amount of labeled data, and the rest of the data will be given to the unlabeled part. So this is how, I mean, in the unless we are getting this complete label data, this cycle will move on. So where we are using this semi-supervised in internet content classification, you can see if you are writing machine learning, which page will appear first, followed by the other page. It depends on the semi-supervised machine learning algorithm. Earlier, we are not using machine learning part, so it was all signature based. But now the Google search algorithm, they use this semi-supervised learning algorithm to rank in order to do the page ranking. But of course, they also have some drawbacks. That is, we need to balance the label as well as unlabeled data. So if it is not properly balanced, then we cannot say that our result is accurate. Next is unsupervised. Unsupervised means a student is not listening to the teacher. Student is learning on its own, not paying attention to the student. So that is unsupervised learning. That is, we are not going to label the data. There is unlabeled data. So a model makes cluster on its own. It will see, oh, this is looking similar to me, let me put it in first group. That one is looking similar to me, let me put it in another group. So this is how it works. And you can see here that the unlabeled data is being given to the ML model, and it actually sees that, okay, this is different, this is different, this is different. So it makes 3 different clusters. So now it also depends on you. For example, in some algorithms such as k-means, you can give the number of clusters. For example, 3 you have written, so it will make 3 clusters. If you have written 4, it will make 4 clusters. But in some algorithm, if you don't know the number of clusters that you have to make, so there are some unsupervised algorithm also that actually make clusters accordingly to the data. So the recommended system, you bought something from Myntra, and it is recommending you to buy other things also. Why? Because someone who earlier had purchased the same shirt, they also bought this hood, jeans and cap. So from the same cluster, it is recommending you other things. Now, we also use unsupervised learning algorithm in fraud detection, because generally zero-day attack happens day to day, and supervised only works if it is trained. So that is why unsupervised is highly used. Although you will see that if you're using supervised algorithm and unsupervised, you will get better result with supervised, definitely. But you will see the type of malware actually detected by unsupervised algorithm, especially zero day, you will see that it is not detected by supervised algorithm. So that is why accuracy doesn't matter, but other things also matter to make your model accurate. So you can see on your screen, these are the unsupervised algorithm. PCA here, it is for dimensionality reduction, and others are for to make the clusters. Now, unsupervised drawback is, I guess I've already told you, that accuracy would be less as compared to your supervised learning algorithm. I'm going to deep learning part, and I guess you already know about deep learning, so I'm not going into depth. Only saying one thing, that it is a very large artificial neural network, and it mimics our brain. It work like that. It makes decision, pass to the other neuron, that pass to the another neuron, and so on. It will work just like our human brain. So basically, I can say that artificial neuron has been taken from biological neuron. This is how ANN will work. Why am I focusing on ANN? Because in the practical, I'll be using this ANN. So that is why I just want to give an introduction about it, about activation function, association function, the layers and everything, so that it would be easy for all of you to do the practical. Now see, it has input layer, which is not counted in the number of layers. Here we give the input. For example, here you can see the data. So this data has lot of columns which actually contains the permissions. So this will be given to the input layer. Okay. Then it has one or more hidden layers. So these, we pass all data from input layer to the hidden. You can see that this first node is giving input to the first node of hidden layer, to the second. If there is third node, it will again pass to the third as well, and so on. So that is why this is given. Now the hidden layer will do its association. It will apply activation function. It will pass to the another hidden layer, and so on. And in the end, output layer will give you the result, whether it's a malware or it's a benign. So this is how it will work. Now going into the mathematics, you will see that these are the number of features, and yes, a bias would be there. And these inputs have some weights which are randomly assigned, because we don't know how much weight should I give to any feature, because as a human I cannot say that this feature is more important. That the ML model will decide. So I will give random weight to all these features, and bias will be given as value 1. There will be no weight assigned to the bias, and remember, there will be only one bias. Now in hidden layer, there will be association and there will be activation. Now association, it will associate all inputs with its features. For example, here you can see that x1 will be multiplied with w1 plus x2 will be multiplied with its weight, corresponding weight, x3 will be multiplied with its corresponding weight, and so on, and the bias will be added because of
Shweta ma'am, I think ma'am again lost the signal. Wait for 5 minutes.
okay, I apologize again for the internet connectivity issue. So let me share the slide again. Okay, so I was explaining this artificial neural network. Okay. Okay, so I was explaining about the weights that randomly we give the weights, then there comes an association function which multiply input with the corresponding weight. So, and we in the end we will add the bias also. So that is why this we have written W cut transpose W1, W2, W3, and so on, and then x1, x2, x3, and so on. Now you can see that if you multiply these terms, you will get this w1 into x1. This is matrix multiplication, basically x1 w1 plus x2 w2 plus x3 w3, and so on. So this all you do in all hidden nodes, and in the end you will apply the activation function. The popular activation function you have heard about is ReLU activation function, and in the end you will get the output. So this is basically known as forward propagation. Now, in order to get accurate result, we do this backward propagation also. So this is feed forward, and we are going to do backward propagation also, so that we can update our weights. So when we do this backward propagation, then we are going to basically take derivative of this activation, then we are going to take this derivative of z, and we are going to update our weights by doing subtraction of the old weight with the new weight. And this is how we can update the weight, and similarly bias we can also update. So by updating the weight and bias, we again go to the forward direction and see the learning rate as well as the loss. So basically, if you have heard about this, so we should go very slowly. So that is our learning rate. You must have seen that it is approximately 0.0001. Why it is very slow? So that we should move very slowly. If we are moving basically taking big step, then we can see that we can avoid, or we can this miss this global minima or local minima. So that is why we should take these steps very slowly. So whenever we are moving and then we are reaching this global minima, then we will stop, and then it will do the classification. So this is the complete procedure that I've showed you. X1 into W1, this is for layer number 1, and this is for layer number 2, and so on, and for different nodes also I've shown you. So this is how we do for all hidden layers, and rest everything is black box under this hidden layer. That is, whatever it does, we don't know. We only know about this, that okay, it does associate, and then it applies the activation function, and in the end we get this output. Now the number of hidden layers you want to use, the learning rate, everything, it depends on you. The activation function, these are known as hyperparameters. Now it is, you can do it randomly also, but there are some functions available actually that you can use in your code to get the best hyperparameters. So they will give you that, okay, for your work these are the best hyperparameters because they have your data. So this is how it works, and you can do this grid search, and all other algorithms are actually present to do your work. This is basically the deep neural network. If you're using a lot of hidden layers in your work, then that becomes your deep neural network. And activation function, you might have heard about this very basic sigmoid activation function, which actually has this S-shaped curve. It is also used in logistic regression. So because logistic regression is nothing but if you're using this artificial neural network without these hidden layers, there's no hidden layer, just an input and output. So that becomes, or one, we can say one node, and then your output, then that becomes your logistic regression only. So there we use this activation function because it works like this, that if you're using this, if you're getting a value above 0.5, then it is going to be a malware. If you are getting a value less than 0.5, then it is a benign file. So this is how you can differentiate both a malware or a non-malware. So 0.5 we can see is basically our threshold. So you can see here on my screen also that so in sigmoid activation function, what we does, we basically choose a threshold which is 0.5 and we apply a function and it will be used to classify. So that is why we do not use this activation function in hidden layer. We use this in output layer only because it has a range from 0 to 1 only. Okay. So if it has a range from 0 to 1 and 0.5 is the threshold, you can use it for activation function. You can't use it for you can use it for binary classification. You can't use it for multi classification. You cannot use it for hidden layers as well, because you can see that hidden layer can have any value from 0 to infinity or minus infinity to plus infinity. So sigmoid function has this formula 1 over 1 plus e raised to power minus z. Now whatever value you put here in z, you will get the value from 0 to 1 only. So that is why there is S-shaped curve in it, and that is why its range is between 0 to 1. And for this reason, we will be using this in only output layer and for binary classification only. Please remember, if you're doing multi classification, then we have another activation function, that is your softmax activation function. Now next is your tangent activation function, that is tanh, or we can say it hyperbolic tangent activation function. Now you can see that if sigmoid, this red color line, has a range from 0 to 1, tanh actually ranges from -1 to +1. So that is, the range has been increased. So if the range has been increased, so it means more values can be mapped here. So that is why we use this in hidden layers, but we don't use it in output layer, because in output we only want 0 or 1, no? Whether it's malware or it's not a malware, rather than -1 or +1. So that is why we use it in hidden layer. And the advantage is that here the negative inputs, obviously we have negative as well as positive inputs both. So negative input will be mapped strongly negative, positive input will be mapped strongly positive, and zero input will be mapped near the 0. So that is why it was very popular, hyperbolic tangent activation function. It was released very popular. But then a new activation function came, that is ReLU, that is rectified linear unit. Why the problem in TenWith was, still it is from -1 to 1, the range is limited. Okay, but in hidden layer too, you can see any range. So that is why the next activation function came, which will give you value in between 0 to z. 0 means if you are getting any negative value, it will be flat 0. Positive value, whatever input you are getting, you are getting the straight line. That is, whatever input you are getting, you will get the same output. So the range is from 0 to infinity, and it is also used in hidden layers. And even right now, whenever the researchers are doing some research, they are very happy to use this ReLU activation function. And by default also ReLU activation function is being used. If you're not writing activation function is equal to nothing, not writing this activation function, by default ReLU activation function is being used, and it learns much faster in ReLU. Whenever you're using this ReLU, neural network learns much faster in ReLU as compared to your another activation function. Even you can do a comparison. Again, it depends on data to data, but generally I've seen that with ReLU you will get good result, and you will see as compared to your other activation function. Now here the problem is that all negative value becomes 0. So negative value has also some values, na? So it decreases the ability of the model to fit or train the data. So that was actually a problem here. So that is why really leaky ReLU activation function came. And here basically what we are doing, we are multiplying a with 0.01 constant. So that becomes your leaky ReLU. You can see here a leaky line. So instead of flattening it to 0, we are also giving increasing the range of the ReLU function by giving value or importance to the negative values as well. So that is why its range is from -infinity to +infinity. The positive part is same. Whatever input you are giving, you will get the same output. But here in negative, we are multiplying it with 0.01. So we are getting this leaky line. So its range is minus infinity to plus infinity. So that is why we are going to use it in hidden layers. So that is why it is very important that you should know which activation function you are going to use in hidden layer and which you are using in uh, output layer. Even when BTech students are making their project, and whenever we are taking this Viva, we have seen that they don't know actually if they're using multi-classification, they have applied sigmoid activation function. They don't know actually about these kind of function. They just got the data from GitHub or from any other source. They apply the same on their work because applying ML model is very easy. So DeepSeek, ChatGPT, they create the code and they apply the same. So that is why we should know why we are basically be using a particular model. We need to write the same in a research paper also. We need to defend our work, why we are choosing this model as compared to other model. So these are the things that we should know. Now next I'll be moving to the practical part. So before doing practical, there are some case studies that I'll be showing you. This is all about multi-layer perceptron. Okay. I have used lot of GIFs in my PPT, so that is why I'm getting some issues. Okay, let us see some case studies now. So we know the difference between machine and deep learning, that feature extraction is all automatically done in deep learning and it works on images, videos and text very well. So that is basically a deep learning, and definitely if we have large amount of data, deep learning will give you better result. If you have less data, then you can go with machine learning part. But nowadays, if you have heard about transfer learning, pre-trained models, VGG19, VGG16, ResNet 50. So if you have less amount of data, you can go to transfer learning also. It will utilize less number of resources and it is already trained. You need to train only a single layer instead of training all hidden layers. So that is basically an advantage of transfer learning. So these are the examples where you can use this deep learning in IDS, in IPS, next generation firewall, you can use it. And here you can see some of the very basic deep learning algorithms. Okay. And in if case study app, I'll be talking about an app that everybody of you use, that is Facebook. You get this basically friend suggestion, people you may know, and it works on AI. It sees your profile, your interests, your current friends and their friends, and basis on that you get this friend suggestion. So this is basically works on AI. So nowadays our antiviruses, they are also coming with AI. They make decision on what it learns. Earlier it was only signature based. So if a malware signature is uh, basically compared with the database of antivirus, if signature matches, then it's a malware, otherwise it's not. So nowadays antivirus comes with AI. And we all know about Tesla also. It works with unsupervised machine learning algorithm, and they work brilliantly to make intelligent automobile which can make good decisions. And during COVID, we have seen that there are a lot of hospitals which deployed these robots, uh, which can help patients to talk with their loved ones and their family, and they deliver the medicines. And this is how basically use it, so that in order to reduce the risk of infection to the doctors. So this one is the screenshot that has been taken from Fortis Hospital, Bangalore. And we have also seen the sanitizer, which robots that sprayed the disinfectant in various cities of India. It automatically checked the path and moved to right or left and spray the disinfectant. And nowadays, those robots are very famous on Amazon. You can see that there are various robots which can actually sweep your home, mopping, everything. It will done automatically. It is in the form of round shape, and it can clean your floor very well. So they are also equipped with AI. Now, next is S-400 defense system. So in India-Pakistan war, that we have seen that we are very thankful that we can sleep peacefully during night. That is because of this S-400 defense system that we actually bought from Russia. So this is updated. I think S300 was not updated, that other countries has, but we have this updated one. It also used some AI, also the adaptive learning, which learns from its previous engagement. If it missed something, it learns from that how to react, and it also analyzes the trajectory, speed, and the size of the incoming missile so that it can hit the right target. And also it is efficient for resource allocation optimization. Also it will manage and check the batteries, sensors, and radar, and it can dynamically allocate basically these missile interceptors. And if there are a lot of missiles, it will check, okay, which has the highest priority. So this is how it works. And you can see that in our India, in our country also, DRDO, ISRO, BEL, they are working day and night to make these kind of defense systems. That is basically now we are getting from Russia, but we are also working on it, that we can make in India product. For example, the one product that you can see on your screen, that is Akash Tir, that we have used in this India-Pak war. Here we use this Iron Dome, and it was developed jointly by DRDO, ISRO, and BEL. And this is the world's, I repeat, world first operational AI war cloud that built entirely without any foreign component or satellite dependencies. What does it mean? We don't need US GPS. Yeah, if anyone is good in coding or website, you can see that whenever we are using this GPS or making any app, we need to depend on US GPS. So this does not depend on it. It does not depend on any satellite. What it does, it navigate, it lock the target, and it strike. Done. We already have seen in news, and we have already seen the situation of Pakistan also, that even it is not detected by radar also, because it work on low surface area, uh, low flying. So it is not even detected by radar. And definitely AI is used here. It takes data, different types of data, such as your weather, your land data, radar intercepts, everything it takes. And it instead of using again GPS of US, it works on this NAVIC base, and there's no dependency on foreign satellite. So highly commendable and a good defense system. So, and if you have watched the news again, so now our government is working and opening different units and various made in India devices, you can see. So this is all about the theory part, and which I have covered: analysis, detection, theory about machine and deep learning, and some case studies, and artificial neural network in depth. Now we are going to use practical using this ANN to detect the Android malware. Now we are done with the first step, that is data pre-processing. That is the analysis part. I've already shown you that you have the source zip file, and sorry, APK file. You did reverse engineering, you got the source code, and then you created the CSV file. So I have only shown you permissions features, but in real time, whenever you will start working or doing your research, you will see a lot of features. That is known as basically feature extraction. So data pre-processing you are done, feature extraction, that is I extracted permission features, and in the end I'm going to deploy this machine learning model to detect it, and of course if it is supervised, training and testing will be done. So I'm going to use this multi-layer perceptron. So in the end, I'm going to create this confusion matrix while doing the practical. So I like to explain this first before doing the practical. So TN is true negative, TP means true positive, FP means false positive, and FN means false negative. 0 stand for benign, 1 stand for malware. You can do it opposite also, but generally we write 1 for the negative things. It is disease, any disease we write 1. 0 means it is good. Okay. So actual means The actual data predicted means it is predicted by your machine learning model. So if I'm saying true positive, what does it means? That actually it was a malware and it is correctly predicted by your deep learning model. True negative means actually it was benign and it is correctly predicted by your deep learning model. Benign. Now false positive and false negative. Now it means positive but it is false. That is, it is predicted as malware but actually it was benign, so it is false. False negative means negative but it is false. That is, it is predicted negative, that is benign, but actually it is false. Actually it was a malware. So that is false negative. So based on these, we will calculate some parameters such as accuracy, precision, recall, and F score. Okay. Now let us go to the practical part. Now, in order to do the practical, I'm using Google Drive and I'm going to use Google Collaboratory because there I have free GPU that although it is limited, but I guess I have less amount of data, I can use it. But if you have large amount of data, then instead of using Google Collaboratory, you can use Kaggle. If again you can't do work with Kaggle also, because Kaggle provides better RAM as compared to your Google Collaboratory. Uh, so if you can't do your work with Kaggle also, then definitely you have to use your GPU. So let me first open this Google Colab. So in the meantime, I'm opening this Google Collaboratory. If you have any question, you can ask me. So I hope all of you know about this Google Collaboratory. You can go to your drive, you can go to your new and open this Google Colab. And if you want GPU, you can go to edit settings and you can choose GPU that is freely available. No, I have taken below zero. I have taken the negative for ReLU. For ReLU, everything becomes zero, even if I am giving any negative value. For leaky ReLU, I have taken constant as 0.01. Yes, you can change this 0.01 constant. Then it will become your randomized ReLU. Leaky ReLU means you are using this constant 0.01. And if you're changing this constant, it will become randomized ReLU. Okay, now I hope my code is visible to everyone. So I've already shared this code with Abhishek sir. You can take it from there. And the first line, it says import pandas as PD. So we all know that why we love Python programming. First thing is less number of lines. Second thing is everything is done with the help of libraries. So there are a lot of libraries available in Python. For example, here import pandas as PD. So pandas library we are using basically to read the data set. So you can give it any name. It is not compulsory that you will write PD. You can give it any name, whatever you like. So after writing this pandas as PD, you can run it here, or the shortcut is you can press Shift Enter from your keyboard. The combination of Shift and Enter. So it is connecting. Okay. So next is we need to upload the data set. Which data set? That I have already shown you, this one, the CSV file. Again, I am repeating, it would be good if you can prepare this CSV yourself. Okay. This CSV file I'm going to upload, and there are three ways to upload it. You can, if you have large amount of data, you can upload it on your Google Drive, and with the help of O authentication, you can use here. Second is you can upload here in the folders, you can upload. Third is with the help of writing these two script, basically 2 lines of code, then you can upload it. For example, here I've written from google.collab, I'm importing these files, and I've called this function upload with the help of dot operator. So it will be stored in uploaded. So you can see that the button has been created. Now with the help of this choose files button, I can actually choose the file. So it will take few seconds to upload the data. That depends on the size. And one drawback of this method that I'm using, suppose internet is disconnected, then you have to start from the scratch. You need to again upload the data. So it would be good if you can upload the data here on the left hand side, and then there's no need to write these 2 lines of code. Okay. Now next is with the help of that PD, that is this, I'm calling this function that is read underscore CSV. So this is a function that is being used to read the dataset CSV file. So my file is stored as data.csv, you can see here. So that same I have written in the codes. And I'm making data frames and storing it in a variable that is df. So let me run it. Now next is index location. Now I need to tell my model now that these are the features and this is the target. So if you can see the source code, you will see that the last column is your target and rest all columns are your permissions. So that I have to tell to the ML model. Otherwise, how will it know that which one is the target? It can think anyone is the target. Okay. So you can see that there are 330 permissions, and these are basically my features, and the last column is my target column, that is whether it's a malware or not. So the same I've written here, 0 to so see, first of all, in center there is comma. On the left hand side of comma, I've written colons, it means all rows. So definitely I'm going to take all rows. And right side of comma, it stands for your columns. So here you are writing from 0 to 330. Now it takes one less. If you're writing the range, it will take from 0 to 329. So that it becomes your permissions. Okay. Now these are your features. So that generally we store the number of features as X variable. Now the target column, I'm storing it in Y variable. Index location, again I'm writing all rows, but the column is only one. So whenever instead of writing range, you're writing a particular column, it take particular that column. It does not do -1. So 330 means 330th column. Now let me press enter. I hope it is clear. Now in order to check, I can write X, it will print the values of X, all permissions. In order to check Y, whether it's right or not, I can run it. Yes, it is correct. All Y's I can see here. Now what you have done, you uploaded the dataset and you divided the dataset into X and Y, that these are my features and this is my target column. Now the next is I need to perform the training and testing. Now training and testing, you can do 80-20 split also or 70-30 also, but the large data should be given to the training part, because in classroom we teach all syllabus. Approximately we cover everything in class, but in question paper we have limited, because 3 hours or 2 hours are given to the student, in which student have to write the answers. So we give a less number of questions. It's not like that we give complete syllabus in the question paper that hey students write everything. So that is why we should give more data to the training, because we would like that our machine learning model should learn more. So from sklearn.model selection, I have imported this train test split. Then now it will do everything. You don't have to write the code. It will do everything. Now you will write this train test split. You have given x. X means your all features you have already written somewhere here. X and y. Okay. Y is your target column. Test size you have written here 30%. It automatically means that train size is your 70%. Random state is equal to 0 means that okay, whenever I'm running it again, do not change this training or testing, keep it same. Now these are the four variables that you have created or stored your data in: xtrain, xtest, ytrain, or ytest. Now this is done for confusion metrics. Xtrain means the features that I'm using for training. Xtest means the feature I'm using for testing. Whenever I'm teaching in class, I think, okay, this is important or this would be a good question. I can keep it for students also, no? And that, okay. So that becomes my Xtest, the questions I'm putting in question paper. Ytrain means the answers that I'm providing in the classroom, or the labels that I'm providing to the machine learning model if it is supervised. PyTest means now the labels that I don't give to machine learning model. Okay, so these are the answers that basically the questions that I put in question paper. These are the actual answers that I put for myself only, answer script I have made. Whenever I will check the answer copies of students, I will match their answers with this answer. If it is correct, they will get good marks. Okay, let me run it. Now we are ready. We are done with everything. Now it's time to basically use multi-layer perceptron or any algorithm you want to use. You want to use KNN, any algorithm. K means unsupervised. Whatever you want to use, you can use it. For supervised, the rest of the code was same. Okay. Now here from neural network, I have imported this MLP, that is multi-layer perceptron. Name says everything. Single layer perceptron is your logistic regression. Now multi-layer perceptron is like multiple layers. Now here I have used hidden layer sizes is 2. You can increase it also, but I have very less data. You can see only 400 rows. I do not require large hidden layers, but yes, you can play with it, you can change it, and even you can use some algorithm to find this hyperparameters automatically, because these are hyperparameters, right? It is in your hand only. Iteration that you want to use, activation function, if you're not writing 10h, it will use ReLU. If you are specifically mentioning 10h, then it will be using the same. Okay, here I have written MLP classifier and storing it in variable that is MLP. Now I'm done with training testing. I'm done with this MLP classifier. Now I need to train this MLP classifier. Okay, for training, very important, I use this variable that is fit. Okay, fit the model. And in order to test, I will use predict variable, okay, function, sorry. So fit function I'm using, and I'm giving here parameters as X train and Y train. Because in classroom, I've already told you in an example, in classroom, if students ask me a question, I also provide them answers. They can ask me anything in the classroom. So that is why I have written here X train as well as Y train. I hope this is clear. Okay. Now let me run it. So here everything is done. Now can you tell me, out of these 4 variables, which variable or variables I'll be using for testing? Can anyone answer this? For training, so I've used first 2 variables because I'm providing features also, and the last column, target column also. Now for testing, what will I use?
X test and X train, ma'am.
X test, ma'am. We are using X test for the testing, and
Okay.
our target output for the test cases are Y test.
So shall we use this Y test also?
No. Actually, this would be using after trained model. Means once the model is trained, then we will use this Y test for getting out the error. That error means the difference between the target output and the actual output.
Correct. So in training, we use this X train and Y train, and in testing, we are only going to use X test, because now the model will predict. Question paper we have given to student will write answer. We are not going to provide answer to the students. So I have given only X test here. It will predict Y. So that Y will known as Y predict. Now this Y will be matched with the actual Y. And what is the actual Y? That is your Y test. So that is why we have not provided it in testing part. So here we have given, this is the Y predict. Now here confusion matrix come, and in confusion matrix I have written two parameters, that is Y test and Y predict. Y test means this, the actual Y, this one, and Y predict means the Y that is predicted by your ML model. So it will create a confusion matrix. So let me print this confusion matrix. Here you can see true positive, true negative, false positive, and false negative. You can see here that it has predicted. Okay, it has few false positive and false negative also. Now based on this we will calculate the accuracy, but everything will be calculated by taking these two parameters, Y test and Y predict. Y test is the actual Y. Y predicted means the Y that is predicted by your ML model. So you can see your accuracy, 90%, precision, recall, and F score. Now you can see the result is not so good. Getting 90% result is not so good. So can you tell me what we can do actually to improve this result? I'm going to use the same model. I'm not going to change the model, but what can I do?
Since we are using some parameters along with the our deep learning model or machine learning model, so we can change the value of hyperparameters.
Definitely, good sir. So instead of using 10H, you can go with ReLU. You will see the result. You can increase or decrease the hidden layer sizes, maximum iteration, or any other hyperparameters that you can use, and it will increase your result. Anyone else? Any other thing that we can use?
Data pre-processing can be done.
Yes. And with the help of data pre-processing, what can I do? Can I extract more features from the source code? These are only permission features that I've used here. Extracting only permission features won't be sufficient for an ML model to classify whether it's malware or non-malware. If I have more features, then yes, for example, API calls, which are used in a particular app, I can use that. I can use the functions also, classes that is being used. I can use images also, and I can make it multimodal. So by extracting good amount of features, and if you think that okay, features are very large and it will basically impact our machine learning model bad also, so then we can go for feature selection also. If I have extracted thousands of features, then I can select important features with the help of some feature selection algorithms such as random forest, chi-square, information gain. Then yes, it will definitely improve my result. And one more thing, I have only used categorical features. You can see here. 0, 1, 0, 1. So if I have features that are continuous features also, if I'm using for example functions, API calls, as I've already discussed, or Smalley code, then yes, I have different variety of features which will be sufficient to improve my result. So that is basically a research paper that I have again shared, that I'm going to discuss with you. So it was published in 2021, and I've not stopped my research on this ransomware. I'm still continuously working on it. So this was a very basic paper, and here I have done the static analysis. Whatever I've shown you in today's session, I've did the same, but instead of supervised, I used unsupervised. Because whenever I read the literature, I've observed that the existing literature only use supervised algorithm. Only one paper in that paper, the researchers have written that we tried to use unsupervised, but we didn't get good result. This only line I found. So that is why I thought about going to unsupervised machine learning. And second thing, I focused on only a particular type of malware. And it won't be like that if you're doing this research, you can use any malware. If you think about, okay, nowadays spyware is very famous, let us use spyware. No, first, at least the data set should be available, or you should be able to create your own data set. I'm not talking about CSV file, it's about EXE. See, if you're working on plant or agriculture, it is very easy to create the data. Just go to that plant, click the picture of the leaves. Although some plants you won't be able to find, then yes, you have to go to that particular location. I'm not saying easy, but in case of malware, see, if you're going to work on spyware and there is no data on Android spyware only, then you have to create Android spyware, and that will take a lot of time, because creating only one spyware, it's not sufficient. You need to create multiple copies, and it's not like that control C control V. You need to add different functionality in different spyware. So when I started my research, I found that the dataset is not available. I wanted to work on ransomware, but the dataset was not available. So I read a research paper again of China, and I requested those authors by email, and they provided me the dataset, again raw dataset, that is APK files. CSV I need to create it. I created myself, but they provided me the this raw APK files. So here you can see that this is the data set that I have taken from Chen et al. Now, what did I do with in this research? I basically use this. First, I got the data from Chen. Then I use this APK tool. From APK, I got this folder. Now, when I got this dex file, I won't be able to read the code. Why? Because just like we have in Java, we have Java executable. Similarly, here we have Dalvik executable in Android, because there is Dalvik virtual machine instead of Java virtual machine. So when I got this dex, then in order to read it, I used another tool, that is dex to jar. It actually convert this dex file to jar file. Then with the help of Java decompiler, I got the Java source code from jar file. So in the end, I got the Java source code, which was very useful, and I found so many novel features in this Java source code. From manifest file, I already shown you this file. I got these permissions and intents. From resources, I got the text that is written in strings, because whenever ransomware attack happened, it writes some text on the screen of the user. Okay, it need to create an environment of fear that, hey, your system has been logged, you were watching some illegal content. So basically user got afraid and he make the payment in Bitcoin. And why they ask in Bitcoin? Because nobody will be able to trace back. Next, when they actually realize that if we are writing text in strings, then we were able to caught by any anti-malware software. So they were writing the text in images. They started writing text in images. So the data set that I got, that is, I guess, from used some Russian language also. And Russia and Ukraine, their war and cyber war is also going on. So they use this text to log the screen of Ukrainian user. And I got text in different languages, and I used not only English language but other languages also that is widely used, for example Chinese language. And it was very difficult to read the Chinese language. For that I used a translator. And in images also I used OCR, and with the help of OCR I extracted the text. Next is from Java source code, I got some functions such as locking function, encryption function. They basically use this RSA encryption, AES encryption, and encoding they used. And I got these functions and the details from this Java source code. Then I guess by collecting all these, I got thousands of features because the text was very large, and I applied natural language processing, and we have done this cleaning and everything. Then we got large amount of data, continuous, categorical, every type of data. But the data was very large, and sorry, the features were very large, and in order to put unnecessary burden, not to put unnecessary burden on ML model, we applied this feature selection, that is selecting important features. And for that, we have used this dimensionality reduction, that is PCA, principal component analysis, because we basically want to preserve our features. So it reduces the dimensionality, but the importance is there. And then instead of we applied k-means also, but we have also applied Gaussian mixture model because it also covers the boundaries. For example, if a malware is there on the boundary, it does not neglect it. It is very flexible. So we applied this Gaussian mixture model. So in the end, we made 2 clusters because Gaussian mixture model asks you how many clusters do you want. So it would be very easy for me. So I gave it because I know there are only 2 clusters, ransomware or benign. There are no other type of malware that I considered at that time. So this is how it works. So this is basically the reverse engineering, and you can see here the different languages that I have analyzed. I guess Russian and Chinese language, these were widely used in that data set, I guess due to the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. And English, though, definitely I have chosen. So that makes it novel, the work novel, because of using this unsupervised, because I was the first one, sorry, we were the first one who used this unsupervised learning at that time. And these different kind of languages. So you can see here that we have analyzed these images also, in which text was written inside an image. So we worked on that particular OCR, and we extracted the text, and we have also mentioned the type of ransomware which use this kind of text in images. Then in detection, earlier I didn't get good result with unsupervised, but when I extracted these features, then I got good result. So I use this Statistica tool also in order to extract the text from strings. It helped me in, I don't have to write much about it, but yeah, it helped me in various ways to extract the text in different languages. Now I compare it with various threshold I applied, PC I applied, but with k-means I didn't get good results. 66% was the result. But when I applied feature selection and dimensionality reduction, I got good result, best results with GMM. I got 98% result. And the computational time, if you can see, this GMM gave me less time. Obviously, if I'm doing feature selection, the time would be less to detect. And in real time, we are working, we need to detect the malware in less time. So that this way it helped me. And when I compare it with literature, we have these kind of things. Yes, I do not have historical labeling because I didn't use supervised learning. So that is why. So 98.08, and this was the result. So this was only a static analysis that I basically shown you today, but there is dynamic analysis also. In dynamic analysis, if you have heard about Cuckoo Sandbox, CUCKOO, that you have to use, and it generally works on Ubuntu operating system. I don't know about if now it works on other operating system, but when I was doing my PhD, it worked only on Ubuntu operating system. Cuckoo works for Windows, but if you want to work for Android malware, then you have to use Cuckoo Droid. Android ka Droid, same. And in that, you need to give your samples, that is your APK files or your exe files, whatever you have, to these sandbox. Now they will run your malware in a dynamic environment, that is, it you will think it as that you are running any app in your smartphone. So it will run your malware in a sandbox, that is a virtual emulator. Then uh, it will give you some JSON file with network related features such as your IP address, port numbers, time, server related information, everything it will give you. That JSON you can give to your deep learning or transfer learning models, or those JSON files can be converted to your CSV files and can be given to the machine or deep learning models. So I've also worked on dynamic analysis because this session was only on static analysis. So I displayed and I've shared the research paper of static analysis. So this is all about malware analysis. So I hope you have learned something new from it. And even if you are interested to collaborate with me on malware analysis and detection, I'll be sharing my email address. If you have some good students who are interested in this field, you can contact me. We can definitely collaborate and do research in this field. So whatever I've shown you today, it was very basic, from basic to ML I've shown you, but there are again different phases, and you can work on it. Yes, now the house is open for any question, discussion, or any collaboration you can ask. So anyone has worked earlier on malware analysis? Anyone has any experience?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So did you understand anything from 100? I guess 70, 80. Did you understand the process and everything?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then I think there would be a lot of questions from your side, but I'm not getting any question. So nowadays, agentic AI also being used. And BERT models are also being used. So people are using different advanced AI tools. Okay, so there is no more. If there is no more question, then I would like to conclude here. And if summarizing, I've shown you first malware analysis with the help of reverse engineering, and we use this APK tool. Then we go to this malware detection, where I told you about basics. Then we discuss this MLP model, and then some case studies, and then I have discussed this my research paper, and I have done this hands-on ML model. Which model is good for malware analysis? See, malware analysis is reverse engineering, that is tools. And for malware detection, you can write which model is good. So there is not only a single model I can say which is good, because you can apply a lot of models. It depends on your data. For example, you have images, then you can go for deep learning. Nowadays people are doing what, we have basically written a research paper in which we have converted our CSV file into images, RGB images we have converted, and grayscale as well. So those images we have given to the transfer learning models. So VGG19, VGG16, these kind of models we have used. So it depends on your data set. If you're using CSV, you're using images, what kind of data you have, you can use that particular model. But again, malware analysis and malware detection both are different. Any other question? Okay, if there is no question, then thank you everyone for patiently listening to me.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Shall I leave, sir?
Yes, ma'am. There is no question.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am.